Welcome everybody to the NEBOSH Online Conference. I'm joined with Ruth Denyer, who's the Director of Production Safety at Netflix, and I'm James Irwin, Director at Irwin & Colton Health Safety Recruitment Company. So thanks for joining. Today we're going to talk about a topic which is close to both myself and Ruth's heart, landing the job you love. I've spent nearly 15 years of my life speaking with thousands of health and safety professionals, and fortunately helping many of those to secure a job and a job they love. So we'll be talking about how to go about that, how to identify a cultural fit for an organisation that you like, and also some of the fundamentals, some of the building blocks of getting that job. So hello Ruth.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, thanks. Excellent. Perfect. So just in regards to kicking off this, in regards to how to identify businesses you want to work for, big question. What do you think, Ruth? How would you go about it? How have you gone about it in your career?
I think it's a really interesting question, actually. And I think back, but I was talking about my career a few days ago with some of the team, and I was thinking back to my first ever job in health and safety. So I graduated with a degree in health and safety in 1997, so a long time ago now. And I remember thinking about that first job, because you have all the academic but none of the practical, and it's a really hard one. What do you want to do? And I really wanted to do something a bit different. And so what I looked at was the industries that really engaged me and made me excited, basically. Yeah. And so I was really lucky. I saw a job as a safety advisor at the National Theatre, and that's the first job I did. And I think it set me on a path of really being curious about an industry that just fascinates me, and this creative side of things. And that's, for me, that was my home and where I felt I wanted to be. But I guess the long and short is there's no right or wrong answer. People love what they love for a reason, and you have to kind of really think for yourself about, what industry do I want to be part of? What story do I want to be part of telling, if you like?
Yeah, I can agree more. And we often get asked questions like, should I do a master's in safety, or should I go for this role? And without fail, my answer is always like, well, what do you want to achieve in your goal and in your career? And I find, health and safety professionals by virtue do amazing work day in, day out, setting fantastically complex strategies and plans for huge global organizations. But then they don't often do it for themselves, but for their own career. And investing that time, I just think is critical. Investing that time in yourself to just stop and think. And life is so busy, and so you can blink and time will go by so quickly. But having that opportunity to stop and think and plan, and then I find once that happens, everything else falls into play. And the things happen in life, right? Coronavirus happens, and so you can have the perfect plans and the perfect strategy for your career, and it doesn't always work. But I just find that the having that plan is critical, and then whether that next step is right. And I think so anyway. And have you had the plan throughout your career? Have you essentially had that plan initially that you wanted to get into the creative space?
I don't know if it was a plan, but it was about, and I think it's talking to the same thing, but in a slightly less structured way, being honest with yourself about what you want from work, and kind of what trade-offs you're willing to make for work as well, because that's a big thing. And I went from the National Theatre and I went to KPMG and worked there for 2-3 years, because I wanted to be part of a safety team. And I wanted to learn from others. And because the theatre was so small and I was the only person doing safety there, and it was my first ever job, I was like, yes, eventually the creative stuff pulls me into it so much, but there wasn't the opportunity to learn in that environment. And then I went to a charity because I was like, actually, that's where I can then start to really think differently about the problem I'm trying to solve. And so I suppose it's also about not being too strict about your plan, and it's about being honest with yourself. And also, sometimes it's kind of working out what's important to you personally, rather than what you think everybody else thinks is important. And that will change as you change, and that will change as life happens to you.
Yeah, I
because it
couldn't,
does.
couldn't agree more. It's so true. There's a great quote that I often use from Steve Jobs, and it's that you can only connect the dots looking backwards. You can't connect the dots looking forwards.
So true.
And if you and I guess this in some ways I feel like I'm going against what I just said about having a plan. Have a plan, but also go with your gut, right? And those two to me go really hand in hand, and go with what you're passionate about. And money's important to everyone. You've got to pay the bills, but it's really important also to look at how is this role going to help you achieve your goal. And I always find people who follow their passion and follow their dreams, guess what? They also end up getting paid more at the end of the day. It just seems to work like that, because they get roles that they're passionate about and they give everything to. And I think that's really important. But I think what you said around the two, they have to go hand in hand, right? When you go through life, perhaps you're going to get married, perhaps you're going to have children, or whatever happens, you're going to buy a house, and you're you change in regards to those trade-offs, and so your plan will change a little bit, which is fine. But having that kind of vision and goal will help you know whether those trade-offs are worth it, because it's hard. It's, well, now I'm going to commute an hour, but I'm going to get paid a bit more, and I'm going to do a job I love. Is that going to work for me? Well, maybe. It's hard.
And James, even I'll get paid less, but I'll do something I love. And I think that's really important, that we're all, and that's a bit about being honest with ourselves about is it the job title that's important? Is it the money that's important? Is it autonomy? Is it what? And actually, I think the bit to think about that yourself is what probably doesn't happen. And probably when you're talking about a plan, it's not like I will have this job title at this age. Sometimes that's about, I will do something that I'm passionate about, and money isn't the main driver, or whatever it is. And I think that's really important, to give ourselves the freedom, because I think we think it's a linear path, and actually there's so many different things that feed into this decision, and it's so individual.
So individual. Yeah, so true. There's also a really big thing that I think is really important is around having that goal. The goal is not always to be the global director of safety at the biggest company in the world. It's not for everyone. And Dr. Sean Lundy did a great piece on fellowship in addition to leadership. And everyone's not going to be the global director, and everyone's not meant to be. That's not for their skill set. And some of the most unhappy people I've spoken with are in that role, and actually where they really should be is second in charge or a technical expert in a certain area, rather than leading a team of 300 people, right? And I think that's really important. That comes back. It's really good. I really like the honesty. It's all about honesty, and it's hard, right? Because we live in a society where you're told constantly you need to get the bigger job title, you need to get paid more, and it's not. It does not always lead to happiness. But I think the thing I've always gone for as well. If you set your goals in life and you're honest and you know what it is, you've got a clear path on what it is you want to go for, and the world really conspires to help you. And I really truly believe that. And things happen that you would never expect. You get a call out of the blue from somebody about a job, and you know that it's right because you can go for it. So interesting. So I think the how to identify a business you want to work for is be honest and put some time in and invest it in plan, which is good. So next big question, and this is a really tough one, is signs a company's overall culture is a good fit. And I think this is tough for a number of different reasons. The first of which is because the interview process that generally everyone goes through at the moment is the best of a bunch of ways that we use, right? And you may meet a company for between 1 and 4 hours, and then you might stay with them between 4 to 15 years, really. And so it's like you've got to get this right. So how do you do it? What kind of suggestions would you give?
So my tale is one that's a bit, I think, unusual in that I think I've realized as I've gone through my career how important the company culture is to me. And that's my personal view. Like, that is really, really important to me, that I can frame my work within the culture of an organization that I really believe in. And that doesn't mean that should be the most important thing to everybody, but that's really important to me. And I realized that a number of years ago. And in 2014-ish, I was reading about Netflix in an article in HBR, I think, and there was the Netflix culture deck, and the culture at Netflix is unbelievable. It's different, it's challenging, it really interests me. And I was like, wow, that's something I'd love to experience. At that point in time, they were a technology company. They weren't a producer of content. So it wasn't the job for me, but I was like, it set the bar quite high as that's a culture I'd like to be part of. And what it made me do and made me think about at the time I got to a point where I was like, okay, I need a new challenge, was that is so important to me to look at what that company culture is like, what they're saying it's like, but also dig in. An interview is for you and for the employer, I believe, and to ask the questions about, to hold them to account, if you like. You know, does it really live like this? Or actually, in effect, is this just a very pretty document that goes, wow? And so I think it's become more important throughout my career. I don't know if it's just more that companies talk about it now than they did 25 years ago, probably. But
I think so, yeah.
I think also the more you see, the more you're part of the world, you go, actually, this it's something that is really, really important to me. And it's a reason I would join or not join a company. It might, you know, it might be the team that they're joining that's more important than the company culture, and that's fine. But for me, there's also a lot of information out there about company. People say a lot about their company culture. Yeah. And I think it's a fascinating part of organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that as people generally move through their career, it becomes more important. And I also think it's quite hard when you're very new to your career to see through the external corporate brochures to know what the company is like, because you don't, or what the culture's like, because you don't know. You haven't been exposed to many cultures, I guess. And so, yeah, it is tricky. I mean, in regards to signs a company's overall culture is a good fit, I guess going back to what we talked about before, you need to, what's a good fit? Well, you need to stop and think about honestly what you're looking for. And sometimes people, if we're recruiting roles and an organisation, unfortunately has had some incidents and they've been really public, and candidates say, well, I don't want to join there because their safety isn't great, and I can see it because of these articles. And I think, well, actually, isn't that a great opportunity to go in and help to change that? So I guess you need to be honest with yourself about what you want to do, and to know, I guess, you know, how look on LinkedIn, what background are the people who work there, what kind of background do they have, perhaps in your team that you're going to join, where have they come from, the safety leader or the person who's going to take charge of that, how long have they been there for, what kind of initiatives are they running, and I think really important that I was saying is really go off what the company's doing rather than what they say they're going to do or what they say they do. Is like really look at and make that decision yourself based upon actual facts, and also, you know, there's lots of information there. I mean, there's Glassdoor. I mean, I'd always be hesitant about putting too much emphasis on that, but you know, I guess it's open, but there's lots out there, and also maybe look at what's being communicated through the recruitment process, and I think that is important because you know the recruitment team or whoever you're engaging with are your first port of call with an organisation, and organisations know that, and so they should be an extension of the culture more so than almost any other part of the business. So you know, is it an innovative, different recruitment process, or is it really traditional? And does that give you a steer into the organisation? I don't know. It's hard, isn't it?
It is hard. I think that recruitment, the conversations, the interviews, all that stuff that goes around that recruitment actually is a real window. When you think about it, it's a window into an organisation, and the kind of the way that feels. If it feels good, that's probably a good indicator. Like I think sometimes we forget our gut feel, and you probably do get that, and it's really hard online as well. I think that's added an extra dimension to the whole thing, because it's hard to get that. Feel like this is somewhere I want to be, this is something I want to be part of, feeling online, whereas when you meet people, you get into an office, you know how it fits, you can sense it, can't you? So I think that's had a real impact, I would say, on that kind of, does this feel like a place I want to be? It's basically the question you should be asking yourself, rather than will they have me, which I think is where you go to, because you get like, oh my God, am I good enough? Will they have me? Rather than, actually, do I want to be here?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And go with your gut. Absolutely, the gut tells you so much, and assess and be honest. But it's hard. It's difficult. But I think give yourself time as well. You're likely going to make a mistake in your career. It's okay. We're humans, and mistakes will happen. And also organisations change. Often people are on a 3-month notice period. They interview a month before that. And by the time they started, the people they were going to report into have moved on, or a recession's hit, or COVID's hit, or something's happened. And so things change, and we're in an extremely fluid world at the moment, and that's unlikely to go away. So give yourself a break as well. Things do change. That.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. So how can it help your career? How can you know if a move is going to help your career when you're looking at opportunity?
God, it's such a good question, because the thing is, this is that hindsight bias thing, isn't it? You could go, I absolutely knew. I don't think you ever know for sure. I think this is, again, that moment when you're honest with yourself. So why are you looking to move? What is it you're hoping to get out of moving? Because I think there can be a bit of chasing unicorns in your career, which could be, well, it'll always be better. It'll always be better. I'm going to get this, that, and the other. It's like, okay, hang on. Realistically, what is it I'm going? What is it? Why am I going? What am I hoping is different when I walk out of the front door of this organization into metaphorical front door of another organization? What am I expecting to be different and change? And it might be that it's a career progression that you've got on more. There might be something really tangible, or it might be I want to be part of somewhere else. But I do think there is the risk that you always think the grass is always greener. I was at ITV for 17 years, so I'm not one clearly for changing jobs without a lot of thought. But my job there changed a lot in that time, and I went from doing one job to leaving when I was doing a completely different job than the job I started within the company. So I also think that's one of the questions. If you like being somewhere, like sometimes we move organization to get opportunity. And sometimes you need to think about what the opportunity you want is, and actually think about if there's a way you can get that opportunity where you are, as well as by moving somewhere else. And I think that's another question. But honestly, nobody can give you that. You can only answer that question yourself. I think, again, it's like there isn't a grand plan, is there? Like you can't follow one, because if we all followed the same one, we'd all be in the same job. And then, well, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
Be a tricky interview process, but I couldn't agree more. Like sometimes there's like this view that there is this careers person out there that's making all this happen in the background, and that person got that director role because I'm meant to get it, and it just doesn't always work like that, right? They were just the right place at the right time, and they got it. Doesn't mean they're better than you or not better than you. It just means that it happened. But I think for
James,
me,
you don't know what the future brings, do you? So I remember starting out, and construction was where you'd work. If you wanted to progress in safety into a senior role, you needed to go into construction. That was the bit that was the kind of the senior roles in safety. The market for people in media entertainment is at the moment, media entertainment as a market in everything is booming, because production is booming globally. The streamers have come in. So a part of this as well is do the thing you love, because who knows, it might be the next big thing, as long as you can survive doing it. I mean, you need to earn a living, but actually I think if people knew what was going to happen in the next 10 years, then we'd all be playing the stock market, not doing the jobs that we do, wouldn't we?
Exactly. It's so true. And that's one of the great things there's many great things about building a career in health and safety, but one of those, its relevance to all industries, and people have the opportunity to utilize that and combine passions with safety. And it's, it's really important. I think, how can it help your career? Only you can answer that. But you really need to stop and think about that, because as much as I do think, change is important. There's another great quote which I quite like is, the grass is greener, but it's just as hard to mow on the other side, which is true. And
you may have learned a skill. You may have learned a tactic for mowing the grass where you are, and then you have to learn a whole new. When I started out, I remember talking to, and I can't remember, it was someone telling me a word of wisdom of like, you need to move about every 3 years when you start to progress, because otherwise it'll get stagnant. And I was like, and I did move, I've done 5 jobs. I've worked in 5 places in my career, and 2 in the last 20 years. But
Wow.
that's because they're the jobs I had and they were the opportunities that came to me. But it does mean that kind of the wisdom of the moment might not be wisdom for your career. It might be a general rule of thumb, but I think that's again when you have to apply it to your own, what you need from life and what you want from work.
Yeah, absolutely. And with this, I think, how can it help your career? I think flipping on its head, I always think, what can you give into this role? And if you're going into a role purely thinking, how is this going to help my career? You'll likely come across like that. And if you join a role thinking, great, how am I going to improve the lives of the people in here and the huge supply chain that we have and drive health safety and create some really innovative projects that are going to truly improve people's lives and their health and safety, then you're going to come across as passionate and guess what, it's going to work both ways. But I think it is important as well, do just grab hold of every opportunity, because once you look at an organization, it might be they've got 45,000 at one. It might be they've got a global reach that you've never seen before. It might be, for example, when you moved across to KPMG, they had a team that you can be surrounded by and learn those dynamics. Then everything's got that. But really, just when you're in a role, think, okay, well, what can I learn from this situation? And I think, how can it help your career? Well, that is just completely down to you. You've got to make the most of every opportunity in life, and it's not about finding that one thing that's going to be that thing that's going to drive your career forward. It's about looking at all the opportunities, and of which there's many, I think.
And I think that thing about opportunity is really interesting, because so at the point when you're looking at kind of, do I need to change jobs to have whatever it is that's missing? Actually, is there other stuff I could be doing? So like, is there an organization I want to get involved in? I got heavily involved in the IIRSM because I'm really interested in risk and safety. That wasn't my job, but it was something. And yes, you could argue it was about my career, but really what it was about was I'm interested and I want to stretch my brain in this direction. It doesn't always just have to be kind of the nuts and bolts of your job description. You can you can kind of be interested in other things, and that's okay and that's good. So I think part of this career progression piece is getting out of the box of the career progression is the job. It's actually about what do I think, what is interesting me, and how could I get involved in that? Maybe it isn't changing job. Maybe it's volunteering for something or doing some study or whatever it is, but it could be a job, but it could be lots of other things. And I think, again, it's about that, being honest with yourself. Why do I want to move?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So another tough question is identifying how you can make a difference to health safety in an organization once you're in the company before you start to make sure it's the right fit. So what a question. I mean, everyone should be asking themselves this question, I guess, but it's really tricky. Like, how do you know? What do you think?
Gosh, it's so hard, because I think you can look at the scale and the scope of the organization, and that's not necessarily the number of employees, it's how many things it impacts. So the influence, if you like, of an organization, because I think for me, that can have a real impact on kind of what you do. That's ripple effect, isn't it? So what you do in one small space, if it has a big blast radius, if you like, you can do something and it really impacts. So that would be one thing I would be thinking about, is how, because you could go to an industry body, which is very small, but it's pan-industry. So that could have a huge impact within a very small organization. So I think when you're thinking about the kind of things that you might be looking at in health and safety, it's not just internal, and it might be internal, but it could be it's small but has a big blast area. I think actually understanding a bit about the challenges in the space you're working in is really helpful. So I moved from a sector I know. Inside that sector, it's much easier then to get a handle on what are the kind of things we might be looking at. But it doesn't mean you can't move sectors. It just means you need to spend a bit more time thinking about actually what is the expected wisdom of what the challenges are in this industry. Let me talk to somebody who already works in it. Let me talk to the people who are already in this organization about what they think the challenges I'm here to fix are. I think that you can do it, and I think you do have to dig in. But again, it's kind of about until you're in there, you don't really know what you're able to do, because you can never get a full picture, but you can have the ambition and the hope. of what you think. It's kind of the art of the possible. You can understand what the art of the possible is, and then you get in and you go, okay, I know what the art of the possible is. Now, what is the reality of that? And then you have to come up with the plan.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? And yeah, I mean, I guess it's impossible because things change throughout, right? I guess one thing that I thought about when thinking about this was you use the interview exactly as you said. An interview's got to be a two-way street. So just ask the question: what are you looking to achieve in this role? Why are you hiring a senior health safety manager or a director of health safety, or whatever your role is that you're going for? That's a really important question, the why question, and then listen. And if the answer is what you want, and be honest with yourself again, then great. And it may depend on the company. If you're going to one of the companies that are right at the forefront of health safety, then they're likely going to be looking for an evolution of what they're doing. Yeah. If you go to other organisations, sometimes they're the exciting ones, then it can be like we want to tear up the rulebook. We want a revolution. And are you ready for that? Do you want that, or and what do you want? And you have to ask yourself, and because it's tough.
I think as well, you've got there's if you're going to a bigger organisation that like one of the publicly listed ones, the annual reports, the CSR or ESG reporting, those things, yes, they're very smart and they're very nicely done. And sometimes you go, oh, this is painting a lovely story, but they do paint a story, and they do tell you a bit, and they tell you what the focus is and what. So I really think, and the more I've worked, the more I'm aware, and the more I've written part of those reports, I become aware of actually what a useful resource they are. You don't have to read all the financial 800 pages of it, but you do often get a real feel for an organization through that type of reporting, what's written about them, all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think maybe another thing be to look at the resources available. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a huge team, because safety may be delivered through the business, which often is can be the best way. But what does it look like? Do all the frontline managers have a NEBOSH? Do you have resource and funding for new technology? What does that look like? Or if you ask that question, is that telling in itself that the reply just isn't there or unexpected? That could be one way. Mm-hmm. One big thing, Ruth, that we often ask is a reason why people leave a role is that they feel there just wasn't buy-in from senior management for health and safety. And so being able to have an impact, part of the role is to challenge it and to make change happen, right? But to identify if there is that buy-in before you start, I guess that's going to make your role a lot easier. How could you do that in your career? How at interview stage, how could you or how could somebody else identify if there's that senior management buy-in?
I think it's a really easy question to ask, but I don't think you'll get to the bottom of it really. I suppose my perspective is actually that's more on the role of the senior leaders in safety. So I think senior leadership have so much to manage. If you don't think safety is a priority, we're telling the story the wrong way, or we're not quite landing it, or it's not a priority for a reason. And like if finance or HR weren't a priority, you'd probably say that's the CFO or the HR director. And so I think in a way, part of this is reflecting on ourselves. If we're in the right place to tell the right story in the right way to engage people. And maybe again, and I know it feels like it's a bit of a wishy-washy answer, but I sense that people will say, yes, of course, safety is a top priority, but that might not mean what you want it to mean. It might mean they want a massive rule book that they can show people and go, we've got 500 rules on safety. And that might be what they feel safety is. So although people can say, yes, of course, safety is really important. Everybody cares about people. It's like, if you say to people, do you want people to get hurt whilst they're working? Nobody's going to say yes, are they? It's more all the other things that layer up to make people make decisions that you feel weren't in the best interests of people's health and well-being. And I think you only really get into that when you and that's why I think the things like annual reports are so interesting, because when you look at the top 10 risks to an organization, is people in that anywhere, or is it all economics? And so I think you can see a lot more in that space. So that's a really woolly answer, But I guess I think you have to look at the trade-offs people are making every day and think about what they trade, if safety is traded off for something else. Not, do you not care about people? Because people will never they never think they don't care about people. It's just that they care about something else more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, of course, it's really insightful, and I guess what one way that you could look at as well is look at, particularly for a senior role, who's involved in the interview process. You know, who really is interested in who this new director of safety is going to be, or head of safety, because that can be quite telling. And what stage are they involved at in that process?
And I think there's one thing you can look at is, are you a replacement role? Is it a new role? Why is the role there? Why is this role there? And I mean, one of my favorite questions of the last few years internally is, what problem are we trying to solve? And in a way, if it's a new role or what problem are you trying to solve by recruiting for this job? Because people cost money. You're trying to get somebody in to solve a problem. That's what you're doing, really. So what is the problem as you perceive it? And why do you think this role is needed, and you'll pay somebody to do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. Good one. Excellent. Well, some real food for thought there. I don't know if we've given a definitive answer, but hopefully, I don't think anyone does have. But hopefully,
do something you love.
Yeah.
I was going to say, the thing that I often look back to is and this was like, when I graduated, I did temp jobs, because you do temp jobs, and I did waitressing, and I did and all sorts for like 6 months while I was looking for a job. And the one thing that I have held fast in my career is I never, ever want to look up at the clock and go, oh my God, only a minute's passed. And I always want to be surprised. Like I go, oh, it's the end of the day. How did that happen? And if I'm not feeling like that, then I'm not doing the right job for me, or I need to think about the job I'm doing and whether I need to challenge myself more in the job I'm doing. But that's what I need from work. It's not what everybody needs. Some people find it exhausting.
True. But I think it's wise words, and I think naturally, if people are in the right role, that will happen. And if they're not in the right role, then they'll be cockroaching. And it goes back to the honesty thing, doesn't it? Because you can just fall into a trap thinking that, I'm in the role because I'm getting paid more in a job title, and it's a sector that everyone in the industry told me I should go for. But I'm watching the clock, and so there's something not quite right there. And so just be honest to yourself. Like, sit down and what do you really enjoy, and maybe get a coach. You know, coach asks some really insightful questions that are hard. It's hard to coach yourself sometimes. So get a coach, get a mentor. I find health and safety people love when people reach out to them. They love it, and I know Irish runs a mentoring program, and there's lots out there, and talk to people, because likely what you're going through, lots of other people have been through as well.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. I think the bit about actually talking to others, I had some time with an executive coach when I was looking at what I wanted to do next, before I joined Netflix. And one of the things I spent time, once you start to tell somebody what you really love about work and what you don't love about work, they can hear it and they can kind of digest that in a way that helps frame it back to you as, this is what you really enjoy. And you don't realize how much you're giving away until someone goes, this is what you've said. And you go, oh yeah, that's right. This is what I really love about what I do. This is what I find, this is what I want. And so I do think there's real space for that. And sometimes I think, dependent on where you are in your career, sometimes it's a safety person, sometimes it's a management person. It depends on where you are or what you're looking for in your career at what stage. And there is definitely this kind of, I've definitely become more generalist and management as I've become more senior. My job the job I do today is a very different job than I would have done 25 years ago, when I was doing what I would call more boots on the ground studio floor safety, which I learned loads. And do you know what? That job is so valuable. And that job is, like you say, depending on what people want to do, it's not more or less valuable. It's just a different career path you can go up.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice one. So you've identified the role you want to move into. You've identified the company's going to be a fit. You think you're going to have a huge impact on safety. Hopefully, you've taken all these boxes. You've been honest with yourself. You say, right, I'm going to go for it. So just some fundamentals, some of the nitty gritty of getting a job in safety, or getting a job anywhere, but particularly in health safety. So the CV, something that people either love or hate. you have seen, you've recruited a huge number of people in your time, Ruth. What are some of the do's and don'ts? What are some things you see on a CV and you're thinking, no, this is not for me, or you think, actually, you know what? Yes, come on.
So I did my CV when I applied for the job at Netflix, and I spent ages with that exact question, which was, what would I want to see on a CV? And so I was like, it needs to be short. It needs to be short, because do you know what you need? And it needs to look, for me, it needs to look different. But also I was mindful of the industry I work in and the type of stuff that people see all the time. So I think what I was thinking about when I was doing that, I was thinking, actually, there is a bit that is, you need to flex your CV to the industry, the space you're applying for a job in, because it might be that the kind of CV you might want if you're going into one industry looks slightly different, because it has to look like it will attract people's attention, because there's a lot of CVs out there. Has to get to the point, concise, clear. No, I know it's really basic, but I always notice mistakes. Like if bullet points don't line up, it really annoys me on a CV. Yeah. And they seem really basic, but actually it's like, if you haven't got the attention to detail to do that, then hang on a minute, what's the next? So it's those little things that seem little at the time. You're like, oh yeah, we can let that go. But what that reflects back is, I just can't be bothered with the little stuff. So I think there's a lot of things that you need to think about, in that this is really representing who you are and what you stand for. And I think sometimes we think of it as a list of achievements and qualifications, and actually it's more than that. I was very much about, I need to explain what's important to me, so someone can see that it's me. It's not just a list of qualifications I've got, or certificates I've done, or all the jobs I've done with each job description underneath it. So I think representing yourself concisely and clearly, being personable as well, like being a human, because actually we're recruiting people, and so feeling that human side, but also that, honestly, that attention to detail. I'm sure you see it as a recruiter, that attention to detail, I think it's so easy not to do it. And actually, like, this is the first thing they're going to see. This is the first piece of work of yours any employer is ever going to see, and you go, this is really important.
Yeah.
So that's my starter for 10.
I concur with all those points, and it matters. I think that's the most important thing. A CV matters. Don't fool yourself that it doesn't matter. You know, there are a lot of people going for roles, a lot of very good, well qualified people, and it is hard to separate them. And if one CV is better presented than another CV, then instinctively we're going to be going down that, and people will make judgments based upon that presentation of that CV. And if it's sloppy, exactly, if bullet points are different sizes, if they're out of whack, if there's spelling mistakes, it just represents on the person.
The other thing I would say, which is, if there's a job, so if you're not just doing yours, kind of, you end up with your CV and then you end up with a job, you go, do you know what, I really, really want that job. You look at what someone's asking for, you look at how those skills are represented in your CV. You don't make stuff up, but you target it at I have got the skill set you're looking for. This is why I am the right person for your job. And especially like in this world where often you're not doing covering letters and things, if you're attaching your CV, you're maybe attaching it online or something like that. I think that time to think about, I'm not just carpet bombing everybody with my CV. I'm actually saying, this is the job I want. This is why I'm the right person for your job, is quite an important way to think about the CV as well.
So important, Ruth. And that comes back to our earlier conversation about your career. Like, pick stuff you're truly passionate about, and that is unlikely going to be every job out there. It's going to be a really small number of jobs that you're really passionate about, and that means you can really focus your CV onto those. And particularly senior people, you're going to have 3 or 4 different types of CVs at least by the time you finish your role, and that's fine. As you said, it's not a bad thing, but every role is going to be slightly different, and every role is going to be looking for different things. So one role might be European focus, and you've got to tease out your European experience. Another one might be all on a technical aspect. Another one might be about leadership and setting strategy. And a CV cannot be an overview of everything you've done in your career. It just can't be. And you know, 2 pages, not 2 pages. I don't know. I say yes, 2 pages. It's a thing. I've seen some of the most senior people in the world her global leaders of health safety condense their career beautifully in 2 pages, and if they can do it, so can other people. And I get it.
It
You
also
build a
makes you
career.
think.
Yeah,
It makes you think about what's impactful. It makes, because if you have infinite space, it's basically your pitch document about who you are and why you're suited to them, and that's what you need to think of it as, I think, rather than a lot. It does become a massive list. I mean, you could be there for years by the time you're 55.
Yeah, you got to. If you think, are those roles earlier in the career, are they having an impact on that global director role you're going for now? And if not, why are they on there, right? What else could be on there? And you've got to keep it clear and concise, because if your CV is 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 pages, and I've seen some of the longer, you're really unlikely going to come across as clear and concise. And in health and safety, it's such an important skill to condense information into palatable form. So really think about that, and keep it consistent. Just put some time and effort into it, and you know, there's no excuse for it, right? There is so many free templates out there on online. There are so many templates. You can Google what a good template will look like in media or in construction. What's important. Put some money into it. Go to a CV writing. There's thousands of people out there that will write a CV for you. And if you're not great at using Word or online tools, that's fine. But you can get someone at relatively low cost that is. And if that makes that difference between you nailing that job and not, then hey, you know, invest in yourself. I always say that, invest in yourself and back yourself. I think it's important. So you've identified the job you want. You're passionate about it. You've got your CV looking spick and span, looks fantastic. You've got yourself that interview. Exciting. The heart's pumping. You're about to go for interview. What is important? What's important for interviews? And again, I hazard a guess at how many people you've interviewed over your career, Ruth. What stood out for you? What works? What doesn't work?
I think it's really interesting, because I think there's very different types of interview. And I think sometimes, I think it's useful to understand. And sometimes you kind of, whoever's recruiting, it's nice to ask for kind of an expectation of what that interview will look like. Yeah. So is it very formal? Is it a chat? It's quite good to go in with that idea, because they're very, very different. I think that genuine answers are really important to questions. So not the answer you think somebody wants to hear, because sometimes you hear answers like, hang on, that's just what you think I want to hear. And you start digging and everything falls apart because it's not. So being genuine, I think being humble. So if you don't know the answer, or it's something that you go, actually, that's outside what I've normally dealt with, that's really important too. And I feel like having kind of understood the nature of the organization and the job you're applying for is really, really key. So actually spending that time. Do you know what? If you really want a job, you need to spend a bit of time understanding the organization, like you say, the culture of the organization and what they pertain to be, the annual report, what's in that. So you go in with this picture of what you think it is, and then you can ask the questions about whether it is, or if someone says, why do you assume that, you know why. But I do think it's the same thing as the CV. If you are applying for a job, make sure you spend your time kind of investing in that job. And I know it's hard if you don't get it, but you'll learn something along the way.
Absolutely, all of the above, and it's all about that research and preparation. And you should be getting a document called a role specification, which literally tells you exactly what they're looking for in this job, right? So you've got bullet points just there on what they're looking for. And so work through those bullet points and just draw out key, concise examples from your background, which are relevant. And that you're not going to use them all, but you'll notice the same ones come up when you're writing it out. And guess what? They're probably going to be really relevant for this interview, and put facts and figures around it, right? And I find the best interviews are ones where people are clear, concise, they back up everything they say with examples. And it just the person doing it say, great, awesome, fantastic. This person ticks that box. And the way to do that is just research and preparation. Really good little tip is perhaps look at the company's newsfeed, because that really gives an indication as to what is being talked about internally. And look, if they've just acquired another company, or if they're just launching a new technology, or they've built a manufacturing plant, then that is often which is taking up all the oxygen inside an organization. And so tune into that. So ask a question about that. Talk about that. Have they won an award on safety? Mention that. Look at all those things. It's important.
Mm-hmm.
What about questions? It can be a tough one. What are there any standout questions for you that you like to hear, or any that are really put you off a candidate?
I don't think any really put me off. I don't think, but I think I love curious questions. Like, I think curiosity is a really important thing in the job that we all do. And so people who ask questions that are slightly out of the ordinary, so not how does senior leadership feel about safety, because that's quite an easy one, but something about, I see you've acquired this company. How do you think that's going to work with kind of integrating the cultures together? Or you've got a global footprint. How does that kind of, I don't know, just the things that are more curious, more challenging in a way, but like evidence that there's a bit more deep thought in the question that's being asked. And I've got 5 standard questions asked at the end of the interview. And actually, if there's stuff that I do like, the questions that people ask, what's it really like? So like the culture within your culture, you speak about this. How does that show up in that day-to-day work for you? I think that's a really good question if you're interested in something to do with the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I love when people ask questions that actually stop and make me think, because that means they've thought about it. And I'm like, that's actually a great question, and it makes me explore our organisation and give really honest answers, because ultimately that's what it's all about, and it should be a two-way street. And I think that if a candidate can link their research into a project or something that they're working on at the moment, and ask a question and say, hey, I just noticed you guys have launched an amazing mental health strategy. We tried that, but we really struggled to get engagement because we got across so many sites. How are you overcoming that? And if you can get into that sort of conversational type mode at an interview, generally it's always a good thing. Not always, because sometimes companies have a strict list of questions and they're only going to stick to that. But normally that's a good thing. And to me, that kind of demonstrates somebody that A, has some relevant experience, and B, is genuinely interested. And health and safety people are, purpose driven, right? They're there to drive a health and safety environment for people. And so having robust discussions about how best to do that, I think is a great place to be. And also that surely will give you a really good, because it is a two-way street, and that will give you a really good insight if you're a interviewee as to, hey, do they want to talk about it, or they're just going to tell me what I need to do when I get in there. So it's really really interesting. Recruitment consultants in the space. So obviously, I've recruited across the space for a number of years, but there are ways in which, like any consultancy or organisation, there are ways to engage. What have you found has worked in your career? I don't know if you've used recruitment consultants along the way when looking for a job, or even recruit yourself. What have you found is the best way? How can you get the best out of that relationship?
I think being honest is really important. Again, it's so much of this goes back to honesty, because I think both ways, actually. I think that bit about what you do want, what you don't want, what you will compromise on, what you won't compromise on, all those things, and having that really honest conversation is really important. I think also for me, actually understanding if the jobs you want go to recruitment consultants, because some organizations have internal recruitment teams and don't use consultants. So there's another piece there. But I think a lot of it is about being honest, being realistic, and kind of just having conversations with people. So like there are, like you say, there are a number of recruitment consultants. I will talk to all of them about kind of jobs or if I'm looking, and genuinely, if you're not looking, just tell people, because I think that must be really hard if you say yes, you're looking and you're really not, or if you convert, it's that two-way street, I think, and having a relationship that is a two-way street, that is saying, this is why it's good, this is why it's not. I don't know. I feel like that would be the most effective way to use the conversations that we all have.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And from a recruitment consultant's point of view, speaking with someone that knows what they're willing to trade off and what they're not, it's just so much easier. If somebody says that I will commute into London but the salary needs to be this to cover the fare, and I will do it if I get a job in the chemical industry because I'm really passionate about that, and that's what I studied. Then just it all makes sense. Great, perfect. Yeah. Now, what that means is that we're not going to call them about the construction health safety role, which is in next to the house, because people don't want that. They don't want to be called about every role. But it just makes it so much clearer for us. And guess what? When that role does come up, we're going to be able to go back to them and look to form a relationship, do a little bit of research. Look that there are generally recruiters are going to be focused on health safety, also on an industry. So look to join and work with the one that's good for you, and look online again. A lot of this comes down to honesty and research. Take some ownership for it and do some research into it. So I know we're coming to the end. Any final thoughts, Ruth, on how to land that job you'll love in health and safety?
God, it's such a good question. I genuinely, and I think I've said it so much, but I think that being honest with yourself is going to be the most important thing that you can do. And then, yes, you have to, and actually put in the work in as well. Yeah. They don't just fall in your lap. And one of the things that you can really do, and networking is hard. I don't do it naturally. I've worked really hard to get to know people in the industry and do more stuff over the last 8 years because I think it does make a difference, but I think it's difficult. So I think kind of the bits that you do that you go, and then you go, no, and there's a reason. So it's kind of paying it forward, if you like, that you do work beforehand before you even know you want to go somewhere, just to learn more about what other people are doing and get the connections and all those things. But it does take its toll.
Yeah, no, it's not easy. It's not easy, is it? And it's it's tricky. And I'd agree. This it's your career, it's your life. You're going to be working for 40, 50 years. Who knows? So just go over and above and think about it. Think about what you're going to do to where you want to get to, and then from there, as you talked about before, be honest about it, and the world will conspire to help you. But investing that little bit of time, it really helps you pointing. And if you're not pointing that right direction over a long period, then you can go off in a massively tangent and think, gosh, how did I get here? And just be clear about it. And and good things will happen. So lovely. Well, that's been fantastic. So I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Thank you, Ruth. It's been fantastic to catch up and chat. Thank you, NEBOSH, and I hope everyone's enjoyed the conference.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, Ruth.